What's up, guys? It is Wednesday again, which means I have another video, another critique video, so to speak, a reaction video, if you will, that I've done for 2 months now, going into 3 months already. The reaction videos that I have are basically um, to critique some of the methods that are being used, some of the ways that people either do tile or bathroom renovation or shower builds. Usually, I've been trying to focus in on builders or other tile guys that are doing things, in my opinion, wrong. And it's for you to judge because whoever watches this can kind of make up their own mind on what an easier method would be. But there are tried and true methods and tried and true type of tools that we use in this industry to make our job easier. Some of them have even been invented to make it easier. The bucket saver is a good example, right? Like whoever invented it decided they got tired of cleaning buckets every day. So they just invented this formed piece of rubber that goes into kind of a liner that goes into a bucket. And it just saves a lot of time because all you have to do now is just clean off the inside of the bucket saver. I do anyway, and then just leave all the mud in there till the next day. It dries out and you invert it, and then the thing plops out. So there are there are certain tools that we use to make our life easier that we use, and some people don't because they don't know about them or they decide they don't want to use them. And this guy right here is doing the same thing, which is kind of odd because this is the third video of five. Third? Sorry. This is the fourth video of 5 videos of this guy. He's a homeowner. He decided he didn't want to spend the $7,500 that somebody charged him, wanted to charge him for building a shower, so he did it on his own. Um, my focus has been, as I said, on contractors and people like that. But every once in a while, I've been focusing on a DIYer, a homeowner that is kind of doing things wrong or could have done them better. And so this is the fourth in a series of 5 videos talking about this guy. He's kind of actually funny in a way that he is just naturally putting things together and getting frustrated or being happy about things and all that stuff, which is why I love his series of videos because he broke them down into 5. And so I broke them into 5. And his videos are about 12 to 15 minutes long, which is going to make my videos 30 to 40 minutes long because I got to chime in on what I think. Um, but he over engineers some things, as he did on the last video. If you watched last Wednesday's video, he the beginning of that video is how he over engineered the bump outs on the pan liner in the corners. Like he literally put a car jack in there to push back the pan liner against the wall board. So anyway, he over engineers this whole process, and he starts to do it on this video too, where he's starting to do the tile now, because everything we've done the last 3 videos have been the prep and the last 2 are the tile. So this whole video is only about his shower floor. So I'm going to go ahead and let this video play because I want you guys to see his mythology, is that right? Methodology on how he decides that he's going to make this happen.
Another major step. I'm finally ready to start installing the tile on the shower base. So something that I've never done. So that's going to be, I think, quite interesting. And I've already started to find some issues, which I probably could have found a way to not tell you, but in an effort to be 100% transparent about all the mistakes that you might encounter if you ever decide to build a cabin, you need to know about those mistakes. So let me show you. So you see these 2 walls over here? I was just casually putting my carpet square on it, and check this out. I mean, this is almost laughable, but I don't even understand what's going on here. But apparently, these 2 walls are out of square by a lot. That's almost an inch.
Okay, so I'm going to chime in on this. I think I know what the major malfunction is here. What he did is he did the 2 sidewalls first, right? Remember I told you that he used a car jack, in order. Go back to last Wednesday's video and you'll see what I'm talking about. He used a car jack to push the 2 left and right walls apart from each other, meaning that he did his folds on the left and right wall, which gave him the bump out, which gave him the idea to use a car jack to push those folds down further so he doesn't have a bump out. So I think where this inch came in is that he actually got the back end where the corner's at, he got the back end where the jack was at to push out further to compress the pan liner, but it wasn't able to do that on the wall proper. I could be wrong on that, but that's kind of my take. But the idea of putting a square on it after the fact is kind of crazy, because if it's not that, if it's not the pan liner issue, then it's definitely a stud issue, and he should have known that from the get-go. But I'm going to let him play.
That is almost an inch. That's just unbelievable. But anyway, there's nothing I can do about it right now. So hopefully I'm going to be able to tile and hide this somehow, but this is shocking to me. On the other side, we're off by a 16th of an inch, which is very good. So here we do have like a nice square. I'm gonna use this nice mosaic, and I'm about to start dry fitting it first.
Okay, let me back up to that just a second. I'm gonna show you what he says when he says nice mosaic. See how it bends so easily? And you're going to see it later on. The backing on this mosaic is actually like, it's a fiberglass mesh, but it's not a really intricate mesh. It's just a little bit of strand of fiberglass on the back with glue. And I've worked with this type of tile before, and that's why I'm chiming in on it. This is a lower end type of mosaic. You know, it is probably, my best guess, about $6 to $8 a sheet. Whereas a good formulated type of mosaic should be on a mesh backing that has what would I call it? More glue and more mesh than what this has, because that way it kind of stands rigid. If you hold this piece of mosaic up in the air, it should bend a little bit, but it shouldn't collapse. And I guarantee with this one, if he held it up in the air like that, it would just collapse on itself. It's kind of a garbage mosaic. And I don't mean any, you know, like harm to him or anything, because he doesn't know any better, but I'm letting you know that not everything is the same when you go to tile stores. The more you spend on tile, trust me on this, the better product you're going to get.
I'm about to start dry fitting it first.
Because since it only gives you so much time to work with, I figured that doing a really thorough dry fitting process would be much better and much less stressful than trying to like right away jump into the thin set. So at my out of square wall, obviously I had to take the measurement very precisely, and you will see right in a second when I draw that line that this is, you know, the out of squareness. You can see it in the tile, and that's how I'm gonna try and hide it somehow.
So I've never used this tool, and I have no idea. Oh well, this is gonna potentially work.
Okay. He's going to be really happy with this, but I'm going to let you know, as much as he over-engineered this shower and used a lot of methods that I don't agree with, he decided not to rent a tile saw, a wet saw. A manual tile cutter for a mosaic is the last thing that I would ever recommend to a homeowner to use, you know, because well, it's complicated, but a manual tile cutter is because you can't get a hold of a wet saw. And you're going to see the reason why he could have used a wet saw a lot easier a little bit later on. But a manual tile cutter, I haven't even owned one until probably about 8 years ago. And I might use it once a year.
All right, let's cord it. Is it gonna break? Ooh. Hey, that's nice. Oh my goodness. This is nice. Look at this. Such a clean cut. Oh man, that is good. That is good. Alrighty. I'm really pleased with that. I mean, check this out. This is such a nice cut. Is it gonna fit? Okay.
So I did my best to get it as tight as possible against the wall, following that shape. After that, it was moving on to maybe the most difficult area, which is working around the drain. So obviously you're gonna remove the mosaic that are completely in the way, but then you will still need to make some very precise cutting right around the drain.
Go on. You got this. Yes.
I was honestly impressed how well the tile snapping tool was working. I mean, it did an amazing job. Kind of a spoiler alert, you will see in future episode that unfortunately for the wall tiles, I don't know why, it did a very terrible job. Working around the drain is definitely going to take a lot of patience because you don't want it to be completely flush with the drain. You want to probably leave an 1/8 of an inch gap because you will have some grout between the edge of your drain and the actual tile next to it. Based on your drain and the tile, you probably will end up having to do some weird cut just like this one where I was literally supposed to remove, I don't know, maybe like 1/4 of an inch on each side. I got this kind of Dremel tool with a special blade, but you see that it was very easy to just get it chipped off.
Okay, I'm going to say a couple things about this. First of all, you see this mesh that I'm talking about on the back of this mosaic tile. It's just a garbage type of mesh. And so for that reason, the tile itself is garbage, right? Like that glaze should not be chipping off that easily. Having said that, I'm going to now turn back to what I said before about him over engineering some things, but then not over engineering this. Like, well, strike that. He did way too much over engineering. He tried to use a Dremel with some type of diamond blade on there to make this little tiny cut, whereas a wet saw would have made it easy peasy for him. Like literally, he could have cut that out, that one piece with a razor knife, and then just gone to the wet saw and cut that out like in less than 30 seconds. But instead, he struggles with this tiny little cut. So where he over engineered some things didn't need to happen if he only got a wet saw.
And so for that reason, I decided that, I cut off that piece of mosaic and then, just work on using another extra piece I had laying around. That allowed me to really take my time and be very precise with just, knocking.
And this is what I'm talking about. Like literally, he put this in a vise of some sort. It looks like a clamp or something like that that he put on the edge of something in order to get this piece stable, in order to get this little Dremel wheel, this cutoff wheel, to make this cut that would have been so much easier on a tile saw, a wet saw. And I think we're going to get into that later because he also talked about his wall tile, his manual cutter didn't do a very good job on. And you're going to see that next Wednesday when that video pops up, where that manual cutter doesn't do a good job, but a wet saw would have. And it definitely would have done a better job and easier and faster with a wet saw on this piece.
Now just that little corner so that it would fit around the drain. That allowed me to get a really precise cut, and then I could move forward with, finishing up all my dry fitting, which at this point was fairly straightforward because it was just like one sheet after the other, and I just really needed to do cut on the side and at the end, at the wall. And just like that, I got done with the dry fitting, which really wasn't too difficult. Here's another angle so you can see how well I was trying to hug the step of the shower. So then I came up with a way to number my tiles by, doing 3 rows A, B, C, and then I have numbers in the other direction, 1 to 5. And so then I was able to just put some tape and, so then I would know exactly where each piece is going and, with an arrow, facing in one direction. So that allowed me to be very organized and then remove all those tiles because now was going to be the time to put the scene set in and then pretty much put the tile back on the scene set.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about that just briefly here. I'm not going to harp on it too much, but some of the over engineering that he's doing in order to get all his tile exactly where they need to be. We're doing that too as tile guys. We're trying to figure out, okay, this tile goes first and that tile goes next. Da, da, da. As a rule, we're putting all our tile outside of the shower pan in order. Then we're getting inside of the shower pan and we're screening out our thin set, and then we just reach over outside of the shower pan and we just grab the tile. We stack them like this. Alternatively, like this would be the first tile, and then we stack the next one on that, and then stack the next one on that, et cetera, et cetera. So when you grab the first one, it's just second, third, fourth, or however many you have wide, and then down the line. Or conversely, he could have laid that little 3 by 5 area out in his room somewhere, and then just walked back and forth and picked up the tile in succession of where he's going to lay them. That he over engineered even the process of where the tile are going is a small thing, but again, you're the arbiter, right? Of if it's a good idea or not, not me, but I would never go to all that trouble, because by the time he's numbered all that stuff on the wall and then put the tape on the tile and all that stuff, like I said, you just stack them outside of your shower and then you start tiling. Sometimes people think too much. I'm just saying.
Those tiles, because now was going to be the time to put the scene set in and then pretty much put the tile back on the scene set. So here's a scene set that I'm going to be using, and the trowel I will be using. The trowel size depends on the size of the tiles you're going to use. They also give you on the back an estimation of how much coverage you're going to get. So obviously did not need to use the whole bag, so I just did some quick math so that I would know how many pounds of thin set I was going to need, and so also how much water to use. As far as mixing it all up, there's kind of like specific instruction where I think you have to mix it for a few minutes, and then you can put a timer because it needs to like actually stand still for like, I don't know, 5 minutes, and then after that you go back and mix it a little bit for a few minutes. Again, all
Okay, so I'm going to talk to this a little bit. Me. I'm going to talk about me. I don't go through that trouble of measuring out how much thin set and then measuring out how much water I have in a ratio like he's talking about on the directions. You could, but professional tile guys don't take the time to do that. We just don't, because we know basically how much water and how much thin set we need. And if it's too much water, you add a little bit more thin set. If it's too much thin set, you add a little bit more water. So we're not going to go to that extreme. But he is right. It should slate for 5 minutes. Doesn't have to be exactly 5 minutes. Like literally, I'll go outside and make a phone call or do a couple emails. It might be 12, 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes or whatever. And then I go back in and mix it up again. That's called slaking. So you mix it one time and you let it slake, which means that all the little crystals of the cement are doing their job and all that stuff. And then you mix it up again to make it thinner so that you can actually work with it. But what he said earlier about your limited time to work with it, not really true, especially on a small tile mosaic that he's doing. That's going to take him, arguably, he's already done the pre-cuts and all that stuff. So it's going to take him probably 15, 20 minutes. That thin set working time, a couple of hours. So there's not really a clock on this the way he talked about earlier.
those instructions are always at the back of the bags. As far as spreading out the synth set, I decided that I would work. I have pretty much 3 rows of tiles, so I decided that I would just do 1 row as far as like applying the synth set. So first, you kind of use the straight edge of your trowel, so that allows you to put a bunch of it down, and then you can use the actual trowel edge to kind of create that indentation that's going to allow you to place the tile. I also made sure that I would always clean the edges because I didn't want it extra thin set on the edges, because then it was just going to get pressed down and fill the void between the tile and the wall. And then you kind of start laying your tiles. The best technique to like do it is that you kind of like lay down the next one and then slide it on until it just falls on the synth set. That's just kind of like the cleanest way of doing it.
Yes, I agree. Sliding the tile on the already set tile is much, much easier with a cheesy tile. When I said before, the stiffness of that backer doesn't allow you to put 2 hands on a piece of mosaic and set them into the thin set, then sliding them is their alternative. And because he's working with this cheesy type of mosaic, that's the best way to go. But I also will say this for people that don't know, him troweling out the thin set with all the lines and all that stuff, it's not because we're trying to collapse the ridges, which would be the case on a larger format tile. The reason that we still use a trowel literally on a mosaic is so that we can get an even amount of thin set, and you can't do that if you don't trowel it out. You would be guessing, do I have a little bit more thin set here than over here? But when you trowel it out, you have pretty much the same thickness of thin set across the board, and that's the reason we're using the trowel, not to collapse the ridges.
And once I had placed a full row and that I was happy with where everything was, I was going back and kind of tapping it down so that it would really press itself into the synset. After that, it was kind of a rinse and repeat, do the same thing. I mean, obviously, I have the drain. I mean, you see, I protected the drain completely with some tape because, you know, you don't want any synset messing with the top of the drain. So you have to be careful kind of working around the drain. I mean, again, the drain is really the only challenge here. But once you've applied enough synset and, you know, you kind of run your trowel through it, the trowel also has a short edge, which is great to work around tight spaces, you know, such as the drain. So around the drain, because I had to do all those special cuts, I mean, you saw me, I had to like remove a piece of the mosaic and then put it back because I had messed up the cut. So that's when you can use additional tape to actually make sure that all those pieces stay where they should be, you know, at the right spacing. So that's a good way to make sure that everything stays together the way it should be. Same exact process for the last row of the shower pen tile. But again, like the numbering system really made my life easier because I knew exactly where every piece of tile was supposed to go and in which order. So that really made my life easier. The last step is that if you see any synset in between your tiles, you really want to take the time now with any kind of tool to remove as much as possible, because once this thing dries, it is a lot more difficult. I also added some spacer between the sheet of mosaic tile to make sure that the spacing would stay consistent.
Okay, so yes, that is true. You want to clean all your grout lines prior to the next day because it's going to be a real pain to try and do them the next day with the dried thin set in between. But if you notice when he used the spacers, let me back up there a little bit. When he used the spacers between the tile on those cheaper mosaic, they're not evenly spaced. Like literally, they're not evenly spaced. So you have to kind of push out areas. Let me see if I can find that little spot where he was showing, not just before that, because the tile are like very, very close to each other. So he's literally spreading them out right there, right where he's cleaning that line. Look how small that grout line is compared to all the other ones around it. And that's what you run into with, you know, cheaper type of mosaic, is that they don't give you the same spacing. Let me also talk about, I'm going to back up here a little bit for those of you that don't know. You see the wall board is all stuck inside of the pan. And if you didn't watch the other two videos where he actually did the pan, you're not going to understand all of this stuff. Let me back up, back up, back up. You're not going to understand this stuff. Where all the wall board is inside of the pan, this is not what I do, right? When I'm spreading out my thin set and all this stuff for my mosaic tile on the floor, I've got a gap. I've got a 1-inch gap, and my tile go under where that gap is at, under the wall board. He stuck his wall board inside of the mortar pan, if you didn't watch the other two videos, because he's using a foam backer board. And a foam backer board doesn't wick up water, so I don't have a problem with that. The biggest problem I have with this is that if you notice going forward now, he's almost done. He's basically done with all this tile. Where's the waterproofing? So he waterproofs the walls only, but he doesn't bother waterproofing the pan or the curb, which is why I titled basically the last video, "This is going to fail. The shower will fail." It will, because all that water, he's got a water in, water out system now for real. And all that water that's going to get through all those grout lines is going to get into his pan. It's not going to be able to, you know, like seep out the weep holes fast enough. And then it's going to wick into his mortared curb and up and around the curb, because the curb and the shower pan are married to each other now. And then over the curb and onto the OSB that he has where his feet are at. And that OSB will rot out. And it's going to take some time, but it's going to rot out. Guaranteed. And it's going to be 5 years or 8 years or 10 years down the road, but he's going to have a problem right outside of his shower, unless he waterproofs the floor, which in that case, it would only rot out where the curb was at and not the, well, I don't know, wicking action will still, it's, you know, he's kind of half-assed doing a right job. And I don't blame them. Like, I wouldn't want to spend 7 grand for a shower if I thought I could do it too. But either do it all, either go 100% or not at all, right? I would rather seen him just use regular backer board and have it raised above the pan than put in foam board, which is waterproof, but not waterproof anything else. So I'm just saying.
Scraping all that sunset between the the tiles. That's the grout I'm using. It's a mocha color, and again they have all the explanation as far as like how much will you need based on the tile you're using and the grout spacing. Same, you have to follow the the mixing rules that they tell you on the bag, and then that's the tool that you're actually using to place it. So the grouting process is extremely messy because the idea is just to like put this thing down and force it down between all of your joint. But by doing that, you're also putting it all over the place, all over your tiles. It's definitely a tedious step because you have to be very careful that you're filling every single joint that you're seeing. Obviously, you're going to spend additional time around the drain because you want to make sure that this is, done properly. And then the fun part starts, the cleaning process. So you're going to use a ton of water because you're going to use a sponge, but at first, you have so much extra grout all over the place that the sponge gets dirty real fast. And so then you pretty
So he's doing these swipes on this grouting, and this is a small thing, and I shouldn't get on him too much, but he's doing all these swipes on the surface of this tile. First of all, he should have used this float to take off as much grout as possible because it doesn't look like he really did when he first started sponging. But also that he's doing these swipes to get up all this enormous amount of grout that, like I said, could have been taken off with the float much easier. Um, he could have done like a swirl method. See, he's swiping, just swirl, just clean off the excess. The more of the excess you can get off, the better, and then you go forward with doing the single swipes. It's a small thing, but it kind of matters.
dirty real fast. And so then you pretty much keep consistently moving and changing water, changing to clean water so that you can slowly remove all the extra grout, from your tile. Obviously, you're applying your sponge as flat as possible because you're trying to clean the top of the tile, but you're not trying to scrape off all the grout from in between the joints. Once I got to a good point,
The excess cleaning, and let me speak on that a little bit too, because it seems like I'm picking on him a little bit. The excess cleaning that he was doing is adding moisture to the grout over and over and over and over where it's not needed. If he had done the one, like I said, just go across all of the grout to begin with, flip your sponge, go across all the grout to begin with, get as much off the surface as possible, then you're done with that. Now you're just doing the wiping and getting it clean. And then you have 4 sides of a sponge. You have this side on this long side, and then this side on that long side. You flip it over, and then you got 2 more sides. So that's when you do the final. When you're adding more water into the grout than is needed, it breaks down the consistency of the grout. In other words, you won't know it, but the grout will be weaker in those grout lines by adding more water. Another thing I wanted to mention also is he's doing something here that I rarely see anybody else do. I raise my tile about 1/8 of an inch above the drain cap so that I have positive water flow going into the drain. So his tile are not flush with his drain cap, which is perfect. I love that he's doing it my way. I just like the idea of having my tile raised a little bit above the drain. Having said that, I would have done a little taper cut because now instead of the taper cut on the tile, he has to do the taper on the grout. And I don't like that. I don't like the taper of the grout rather than tapering the tile with a cut, but you can't do that with a manual tile cutter. You have to taper cut your pieces of mosaic with a wet saw. So there's that.
I decided that it was probably best to remove the tape that was on the drain because I figured that I could really finish the grout much better that way.
Oh, l'enfoiré. Oh là là, il reste un tout petit bout.
So by being careful and just working with the sponge, I really try to, make the joint as nice as possible between the drain and the tile next to it. So here's what it looked like when it was finished, and then after a few days it dried. So just be aware that the color of your grout is obviously going to be different when it's dried. So you want to keep that in mind when you're, selecting your color.
Okay, so that being said, he has a darker color grout and look more chocolate than it does now. It looks more tan than it did before when it's wet. If you're going to seal your grout, there's what's called an enhancer sealer. And that enhancer sealer will give you that wet look of your grout all the time. So rather than looking like this lighter shade of brown, it's going to be that darker shade of brown that he first started with because it's wet. And with an enhancer sealer, it's going to give you that wet look all the time. So you can change that color. He just doesn't know it. Having said that, when you take a shower and that grout gets wet, it'll go back dark again until it dries. It'll go back and forth. You know, it'll be light and dark and light and dark. Yeah.
But again, it turned out really well. I'm really pleased with the result. I mean, especially for a first time. So next time, I'm just going to keep going and I will start installing the wall tiles. So that's actually what I decided to pick for this shower. So I'm really looking forward to installing it. So click on the link on the screen and that will take you to that episode. Once again, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you.
Okay, so that's about it. That was kind of quick and easy. I made it longer than it needed to be, 30 minutes. And by the time I edit it, it'll be about 32 minutes, but you know, it's all good. So again, I'm not trying to give him too hard of a time. He did, you know, a pretty good job, actually. You know, all things considered, he did a pretty good job of doing the floor tile. But with those minor critiques involved, insofar as making his job easier and quicker, using a tile saw, a wet saw, would have helped him a lot better. What were the other things? Waterproofing the entirety of the shower pan would have made this shower last much longer. The Curb Perfect product, you almost have to marry your curb with your mortar pan, so I can't fault him on that. But he didn't need to use that. He could have used 3 2x4s as we always do. Then again, he's worried about puncturing the shower pan liner because he's not thinking ahead that he's going to be able to waterproof everything. If I had a shower pan as wide as his, 3 foot, you know, wide and then, you know, 5 foot long, I could take a razor knife and rip the entirety of that shower pan from that whole 5 foot length. Put one giant rip in it, put my mortar in there, go forward with everything, and then waterproof. And because I waterproof, ripping my pan doesn't matter. Ripping my pan is irrelevant because I waterproof the surface. No water is going to get in there. And that's why I said if all he did is waterproof his pan and the curb and all that stuff, I would have no problem with this part of the video at all, except that he didn't use a wet saw. And the grouting was a little weird. And the car jack thing was a little weird. there were some things going on here that I've never seen before. But you know, overall, he did a good job. Overall, I think he's very proud of his job. I'm proud that he can do it himself, that he didn't have to spend the 7 grand or 7.5 or whatever to have somebody else do it. Every time he steps in that shower and uses it, he's going to have pride in the fact that he did it. But he still has to do the wall tile. So we're going to run into a couple of problems on the wall tile, a couple of minor things that I'm going to get to, which will be video 5 coming up next Wednesday. And when I say the minor things, you know, again, this is a skill set that you don't have when you're trying to do things with a conglomeration of the knowledge that I know that he went and tried to kind of fetter out through YouTube University and find out all these conflicting ideas. And I think he went on, well, yeah, he went on a John Bridge forum for a couple of opinions about stuff. And so when you get too much information coming from different directions, it kind of convolutes the process. Where the process should be like this, now it becomes like that. And it's like, which one do I pick? And that's the problem I think this guy ran into. But overall, you know, he did a pretty good job. Not too bad, not too shabby at all. Except the waterproofing, that bugs me. He should have waterproofed. Waterproof. The walls aren't even needed. That's the irony. The irony about this is that he used a foam board on the walls where walls don't fail. But he didn't do anything for the ankle below, which fails all the time. Anyway, yeah, look for the last video on the series coming up on next Wednesday. Video 5 will pop up. And in the meantime, if you have run across any videos that need critiquing, or maybe you're like, what would Bob think about this? Then put it in the description area and let me know, and I'll go on it and see if there's something worth critiquing. Because I'm not just trying to pull rabbits out of my hat. I'm not trying to find every YouTube video and then comment on it. I want something that I can really sink my teeth into and go, wow, they could have really done better. Because at the end of the day, my videos, my standalone videos, are educational, as are these, because even the critique videos give information and give clues on my opinion on how to do things better or easier. So yeah, make what you want about it, but yeah, have a great week, what's left of it, the next couple of days, and we will see you next Wednesday. Hey, if you enjoyed that video and you learned something, consider being a Patreon member. $5, $10, $15 a month would help me greatly produce more videos. I make nothing from YouTube at all. If you're gonna call me for advice, please donate $50 for 30 minutes. My link to my PayPal and my Patreon account is down below. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you get immediate notifications as soon as I post videos. And thank you very much for your support.